Good evening, I'm Anna Kalczyńska and this is World News Tonight, coming to you live from Warsaw. Poland closes the sky over its eastern regions in response to Russian drone threat, as NATO launches its Eastern Sentry mission to bolster the eastern flank. More on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Donald Trump ready to impose major sanctions on Russia if NATO countries stop buying Russian oil. The Czechs head to the polls soon in what could be the country's most decisive election in years. And Holocaust survivors' voices are immortalized thanks to cutting-edge 3D capture technology. Poland scrambled its fighter jets today following a threat coming from Russian drones operating over Ukraine next to the Polish border. The airspace over the eastern city of Lublin was closed, air defense systems were put on high alert, and sirens were activated in some eastern counties. All this as NATO launches its Eastern Sentry mission. Defense correspondent Zuzanna Jurek has more.
This is not Ukraine, this is Eastern Poland. Due to the threat of air attack, exercise extreme caution, follow the instructions of the authorities, wait for further announcements. This alert from the government was sent to residents of the following counties. And from the scrambling of Allied jets,
due to threats of strikes from unmanned aerial vehicles in regions of Ukraine bordering Poland, the Polish Air Force has deployed operational assets to the area. Polish and Allied aircraft are currently operating in our airspace, while ground-based air defense and radar systems have been put on high alert status.
to closure of airports and airspace in the country's eastern regions. This was Poland's response to the aerial threat against western Ukraine, which now, following the incursion by 19 Russian drones into the country's airspace on Wednesday, is considered a threat to Poland itself. And this proactive action comes less than 24 hours after NATO chief Mark Rutte and Alliance's Supreme Commander in Europe Aleksis Grynkewicz announced the Eastern Sentry initiative.
To bolster our posture even further along our eastern flank. This military activity will commence in the coming days and will involve a range of assets from allies including Denmark, France, United Kingdom, Germany and others. In addition to more traditional military capabilities, this effort will also feature elements designed to address the particular challenges associated with the use of drones.
Immediately after, the previously announced Allied reinforcements arrived in Poland. The initiative was praised across the NATO's eastern flank, including by Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk during his speech at the Polish Parliament on Friday.
Będziemy poszukiwali wspólnie z naszymi sojusznikami.
We will seek together with our allies as NATO, not only as Poland, all possible long and short-term efforts and solutions using the most modern and effective technologies.
Najnowocześniejszych, najskuteczniejszych technologii.
From words expressing unwavering resolve,
NATO has once again demonstrated its ability to respond to threats swiftly, decisively and with flexibility.
to unity from government officials across the region, with experts emphasizing the initiative will be both a continuation of NATO's activities.
And it's very good that information sharing is mentioned. It is very important. And of course, capabilities to deal with the drone type attacks towards our territories.
As well as an adaptation to new frontiers of confrontation with the Kremlin.
Which will involve a wide range of allied assets with both new and novel technologies as well as traditional capabilities. And it's going to specifically look at how to address challenges related to drones, because using F-35s and F-22s, we need to get more prepared.
Other experts, however, are skeptical as to the effectiveness of the Eastern Sentry mission.
I think it's a public reassurance mission. It is repackaging things that already are being done or were announced that will be done. So I think it's purely reassurance. What I'm discouraged is that it is an internal message of reassurance and not a message of any kind to the Russian aggression.
Emphasizing that NATO will have to put its money where its mouth is.
Politically, things are moving in the right direction, but we have to make sure that the hardware and our knowledge and use of drones and incorporating that into the battle space, if it comes to that, should be something where we spend a lot of our focus on right now.
For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
And the Polish military reported that the air operations near the border with Ukraine have ended. All alerts are hereby called off. Thank you to everyone involved in this operation in the air and on the ground. We stay vigilant. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk wrote on X. I will sanction Russia, but you go first. US President Donald Trump said he was ready to sanction Russia, but on the condition that all NATO allies agree to completely halt purchases of Russian oil and jointly imposed tariffs on China, ranging from 50 to 100%. In his letter to NATO published on Truth Social, Trump wrote that only powerful tariffs could break the Chinese grip over Russia and end what he called his ridiculous war. Agata Dura has the details, including who in NATO still buys Russian oil.
Donald Trump has a message for his NATO allies, a message that says, it's not my war, but I can help you end it. But there is a condition: NATO countries must stop buying oil from Russia.
If NATO does as I say, the war will end quickly and all of those lives will be saved. If not, you are just wasting my time and the time, energy and money of the United States.
That's a quote from a statement the US president posted on Saturday on his social media platform.
NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%, and the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It greatly weakens your negotiating position and bargaining power over Russia. Anyway, I am ready to go when you are. Just say when.
In every month of 2025 so far, EU member states, most of which are also members of NATO, remained the fourth largest buyer of Russian fossil fuels. That's according to data collected by the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air.
These things have to stop, and it will mean higher energy prices for the short term. But at the same time, that could be mitigated if Europe were to relax some of its rules against fossil fuels. These rules maybe made sense 5-10 years ago before the war in Ukraine.
The first responses to Donald Trump's words came quickly.
We are determined and unequivocal. We say a firm no to buying from Russia.
But not all EU members share this sentiment. For the past 6 months, Hungary remained the biggest buyer of Russian fossil fuels within the bloc.
American pressure is especially important in Central and Eastern Europe, where you have multiple pro-American governments, including the government in Budapest. American pressure on quitting reliance on Russian supplies is adding to this effort coming from European Commission.
We see the position of the United States of America, and that this position should be heard by all those who still choose to source from Russia rather than from other partners. Everyone who wants to end this war must do what is necessary to stop the Russian war machine. We are counting on strong steps from the United States, together with everyone else, a strong sanctions and tariff policy. This will be an argument for many in the world.
And while Russian fuels are cheaper,
gas and oil are available today from other countries. Liquefied natural gas is available from the United States, from Qatar, and there are many countries around the world that would be happy to sell oil to Europe. It may be a little bit more expensive than the cheaper Russian oil, but this is what you have to do if you really want to starve the Russian war machine of revenue.
Trump also wants NATO members to impose additional tariffs on China ranging from 50 to 100%, which would be scrapped after the war ends. For TVP World, I'm Agata Dura.
It's so pathetic.
The Czech Republic is bracing for a political showdown. Former Prime Minister Andrej Babiš is leading the polls ahead of October's elections, which for the first time will allow citizens abroad to vote by mail. But forming a government may prove more difficult than winning the vote. Alexandra Bulenda looks at the contenders, the stakes, and why this election could reshape Czech politics.
Czechs head to the polls on October 3rd in what could be the country's most decisive election in years. Former Prime Minister Andrej Babiš and his ANO movement are well ahead in opinion polls. But whether he can return to power, and with whom, remains the big question. The race is dominated by 5 players. Babiš ANO currently polls at around 31%, with Prime Minister Petr Fiala's Spolu coalition in second. Next is Stan, the mayors and independents, at about 12.6%, followed closely by Tomio Okamura's far-right SPD at 12.3%. The Pirates come next at 9%, while on the left, Stachilo, the Social Democrat Communist bloc, clings to the 5% threshold. Other newcomers, like the far-right motorists, a car protest party, and the Greens, are struggling to pass the 5% threshold needed to enter parliament. Unlike previous elections, this one is less about left versus right, and more about whether Prague stays on a pro-Western course or slides toward Hungary-style politics. With no strong progressive left to counterbalance, a vacuum has opened, one that populists are eager to fill. But why is Andrej Babiš still leading after corruption scandals and a turbulent term in office?
I guess to a high degree, these are the populistic policies he is promoting, could be compared to some politicians from other countries in the Central and Eastern Europe, like Viktor Orbán or Jaroslav Kaczynski, maybe. But the other part of the story are the real failures of the current government. I mean, the social situation over the last few years has deteriorated rapidly.
A Babiš comeback would mean a colder stance toward Brussels and Kyiv. For Fiala's Spolu, survival means keeping Prague firmly anchored in the EU and NATO mainstream. But even if ANO wins, the math of forming a coalition could decide everything.
It is true that the current Fiala government has only about 20%, but they could join themselves with other right-of-center groupings like STAN, which has 12%, and the Pirate Party, which is growing in popularity, which is about 10%.
So will October bring Babiš back or keep the pro-Western coalition in charge? The choice lies with Czech voters on October 3rd. For TVP World, I'm Alexandra Bulenda.
142 countries have called for full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza and voted in favor of a two-state solution at the United Nations General Assembly on Friday. Since the beginning of September, 250,000 people have fled Gaza. That's according to Israeli authorities. Last week, the military issued another evacuation order, telling all residents to flee again. Sonia Gatabishchan has this report.
This is what Gaza used to look like. This is what it looks like now.
For those who want to rebuild and to reconstruct the Gaza Strip, come and join us.
The images of Gaza's destruction led 142 countries, including Poland, to call for full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza and vote in favor of a two-state solution at the United Nations General Assembly on Friday.
I think for a lot of countries in this world, this is a place and time when they wash off their guilt for not acting earlier.
Israel and the United States were among the 10 countries that voted against the resolution. Just a day before the UN vote, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu signed an agreement expanding Israeli settlements that would cut into the occupied West Bank and vowed,
"We said there would be no Palestinian state, and indeed there will be no Palestinian state. This place is ours."
Israel's expanding settlements in the West Bank are illegal under international law.
Looking at the plans for the increase of this E1 settlements further entrench the occupation, they fuel tension, they systematically erode the viability of a Palestinian state.
The newly adopted so-called New York Declaration supports the two-state solution based on the 1967 lines, whereby Palestine comprises the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem.
Over the past week,
Over 140 countries, including Poland, already recognize Palestine as a state, and a few more said that they were looking to recognize it at this year's United Nations General Assembly meeting, including the United Kingdom and France.
The mere act of recognition simply means that you indicate your willingness to enter into diplomatic relations with Palestine. So as such, this is not going to solve the question of Palestine. More needs to be done.
A UN-backed body said in August that Gaza is facing a famine, with more than 500,000 people affected. The UN's resolution from Friday also calls for disarmament of Hamas, its exclusion from governance in Gaza, and the release of hostages. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabiszczan.
At Warsaw's Film School, a German film production company is undertaking an ambitious and poignant project, preserving the voices of Holocaust survivors using cutting-edge 3D capture technology. Our correspondent, Karolina Szapland, reports.
Zdzisława was only 6 years old when World War II began. In August 1944, she, her parents and her younger brother were deported to the Auschwitz concentration camp.
There was an older inmate who was there since the first transports. He even remembered Father Kolbe and those first brick barracks. And he said, "You need to speak for us."
Now, aged 93, Zdzisława is telling her story once again. She's the voice of the voiceless.
I took it as my mantle. We need to talk about it so this never happens again. This hatred of one nation against another.
But time is relentless in its passage. How to preserve the memories of those times for future generations? Now, German 3D cinematographers are helping commemorate the survivors' stories using technology first developed for the movie The Matrix Resurrections.
If you have the chance to talk to a Holocaust survivor directly, like face to face, it's a very, very emotional and intensive experience, as you can imagine, because the stories are really like horrific. It's like, like nightmare, and you don't want to believe what they're telling you. We're shooting images that are for the next generations, for generations that work and live basically in computer game engines, and therefore we need 3D content.
In the future, it will be possible that, for example, students can put on VR goggles and encounter Holocaust survivor in a virtual space, listen to the story and feel their physical presence.
This is possible through a technique called volumetric capture. Dozens of cameras film a person from all directions at once at a studio set up here at Warsaw Film School. And so Zdzisława continues to speak to the future generations.
We need to talk about it so this never happens again.
In the quiet villages of Poland's eastern Podlasie region, women are coming together to form grassroots associations that strengthen their rural communities. Blending tradition with innovation, they organize workshops, preserve regional crafts and cuisine, and advocate for local needs. Together, they are stitching a new future for the countryside, one meeting and one friendship at a time. Natalia Komarov.
Forget fancy restaurants with Michelin stars. No chef can compare to the rural women's associations in Poland.
They are trying to recreate the flavors of childhood, just like our grandmothers used to cook. We have what we know, what used to be simply served on tables in the countryside. This is a good opportunity for the younger generations to discover those flavors.
Rural women's associations are a staple of Polish countryside. During summer months, the ladies are very busy. Every picnic, fair or festival, they're there, serving beloved traditional dishes as well as new recipes made of fresh local ingredients.
We make everything with our own hands. My husband and I grow our own cucumbers, our own vegetables, tomatoes, so practically everything comes from local products.
Here, in Podlasie region, the most popular dish is a potato babka, similar to a Jewish kugel. Fresh bread with homemade lard is also a must. And of course, sweets.
Here we have homemade Easted pound cake. The recipe comes from our grandmothers, passed down from generation to generation. Not everyone can make it the way our grandmothers used to, but some people manage to pull it off.
The first rural women's associations were founded over 150 years ago with the aim of preserving Polish traditions back when Poland didn't exist on the map. Today, it is a dense network of women across the whole country.
We are very glad that young people from our village are so drawn to us. It's really wonderful to see them want to help and get involved.
In the 21st century, the rural women's associations now also accept men.
It is an honor for me that the ladies chose me, an elderly man, to join their association, and I continue to come and help whenever needed.
As soon as the ladies, and in this case the gentlemen, finish cooking, the local community shows up for a feast. From Ogrodniki, for TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
As NATO launches the Eastern Sentry operation, Poland was forced to scramble its fighter jets today following the threat coming from Russian drones operating over western Ukraine. Also, Romania had its airspace violated during a Russian attack on Ukraine today. So joining me to discuss the situation and the state of readiness of NATO forces is Elizabeth Braw, Senior Fellow with the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative. Good evening, madam, and thank you for being with us again. Good to see you.
Good evening.
So, are we ready to respond? What's your assessment of the NATO's preparedness?
Well, I think what we've seen this week is an extraordinary show of quick and firm response by Poland, but also by other NATO allies. So if we look at what happened, drones entered Polish airspace. Poland immediately responded by shooting them down. And we also saw, for example, Netherlands coming to Poland's aid. We also then saw statements by a number of leaders from within NATO, heads of state, heads of government, and then Germany and France decided to move more aircraft in the direction of Poland. In the case of France, into Poland. In the case of Germany, it moved them to Rostock, which is obviously near the Polish border. So an extremely, I think, impressive response. And if we look at this incident, what seems to have been Russia's intention was to test NATO's resolve, and the response from the alliance, Poland and other countries, was to act firmly and swiftly. So I think the Russians got their answer.
All right, so all that has been resumed by Russia to a Polish hysteria. But is it really a resolve that NATO is presenting, or rather public reassurance? That's according to some experts. So what should be a more resolved response? What would you expect? Is it the optimal response to Russia?
Well, so the first thing to say is we don't know why the drones crossed into Polish airspace. The Russians say it was unintentional. Then there is the interpretation or the assessment that it can't have been an accident to have that many drones fly into Polish airspace. But it really doesn't matter what caused them to fly into Polish airspace. What mattered is that they entered Polish airspace. And what also matters is that Poland shot them down when they entered Polish airspace. And so that is what you expect from your armed forces, that they neutralize any threats entering the country. And that is what Poland did, backed up by NATO allies. So in terms of response, I don't know what else Poland could have done. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is this was a relatively small incident, even though it was numerous drones, but it was not exactly a full-scale attack of any kind. So if the next step, or if Russia at some point tries something more major or more severe than this, then Poland will be tested again if Poland is a targeted country. But whichever country it is, it will be tested, and as will the rest of NATO. But on this occasion, I think we should have no complaints about the way Poland and its allies responded.
All right. No one got injured, no one got killed. But at the same time, Donald Trump, the US president, characterizes this incident as possible mistake. What's your opinion about the response on the part of our major partner in NATO?
So it seems that Donald Trump is discovering the way the Russians operate, which is that they conduct activities of a wide range, and often it's impossible for the targeted country to establish, let alone prove, that it was done intentionally. And that's what we have seen now for the past 2 years in the Baltic Sea. We have had repeated suspicious incidents involving shadow vessels or other vessels linked to Russia and undersea cables and pipelines. And each time the NATO allies in the region have made the assessment that it could have been intentional. And by the way, the trial of the crew of such a vessel has just concluded in Helsinki. But the problem is it's almost impossible to prove that it was intentional. That's the way Russia operates across the board, whether it's arson attacks, whether it's parcel bombs, whether it's incidents involving undersea cables and pipelines, or whether it's drones. We can say we think it was Russia, but it's almost impossible to prove. And I think that is what caused President Trump to maybe doubt that it was intentional. But what matters is that the harm was done. Those drones entered Polish airspace. And again, Poland acted resolutely so that the harm was disabled for this time.
All right, so let me now jump to the letter issued to NATO countries and the world, as Donald Trump put it on Truth Social. I am ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing, and when all nations stop buying oil from Russia. So is Donald Trump setting like an impossible demand for NATO, given what we know, that for instance, Hungary and Slovakia are still relying hugely on Russian gas? Is it a condition that Trump knows cannot be met?
Well, we don't know how much he knows about European energy imports from Russia, but I think the challenge for European countries with this letter is that sometimes Trump seems minded to establish. It seems that he wants to establish more friendly relations with Vladimir Putin. That certainly seemed to be the case before and during the Alaska summit. And then on days like this, he wants to be firm with Russia and then asks European allies to back that up. And it's very hard for European allies to know where he is going to go on any given day. And these are major policies that they have to adjust if they're going to match whatever it is the States wants to do vis-a-vis Russia. And I think that changing tone from Washington, which can change from one day to the next, makes it really hard for European countries, the EU and the European part of NATO, to match whatever it is the US wants to do. There are a number of countries in the EU, within NATO, that might be willing and able to curtail Russian energy imports even more than they already have. But then they need to know that is going to be the US goal tomorrow, a month from now, a year from now.
Exactly. Not a week even has passed since Polish president heard in Washington that the US would help Poland defend itself. But today's letter seems to point out that Trump isn't planning to drive sanctions against Russia. So what should Poland do in this respect, and how can we respond to it? And what can NATO do in regard to this letter?
What we've seen in the past couple of years is that the European members of NATO, and most especially the Baltic Sea countries that are members of NATO, which is every Baltic Sea country except Russia today, these countries have come together and enhanced their collaboration in a very impressive way. So in 2023, with the cable incidents and pipeline incidents that took place then, it was a pretty the response was not successful. Since then, the countries in the region have managed to build cooperation, maritime naval cooperation, that has allowed them to patrol, look after the Baltic Sea, to the point where now for the past several months, there hasn't been a single incident. I think that is an important lesson, and one that can be learned from. And also it sends a clear signal that European countries, in this case, the Baltic Sea countries, including Poland, are looking after themselves on their own and are doing so successfully. Obviously, it's never going to be the complete answer, but what they are doing now in the Baltic Sea is impressive and is having an effect.
Thank you so much, Elisabeth Brö, for sharing your expertise with us tonight. We're looking forward to talking to you very soon. Thank you so much for staying with us tonight. And thank you for watching TVP World. Please stay tuned for more news and more commentaries to come.